Hi, my name is Judy Van Koyman, and you're watching Life Issues. And you're watching February's Life Issues show, Medical Reserve Corp. And my guest is Jeannie Maggio. Welcome, Jeannie.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Jeannie, how long have you been with Medical Reserve Corp?
Well, I've been with Winthrop's Medical Reserve Corps since we started it 17 years ago.
Wow.
And I went to a meeting at that time with our then Director of Health, Paul Frazier. And we got a notice about a meeting. And when we went to it, there were all these people who were first responders, medical people, police, fire. And there was a conversation based on what had happened at 9/11. And they talked about what can we do to help communities across the nation during an emergency. What can civilians do?
Right. So exactly how did MRC start?
After 9/11, obviously there were wonderful first responders who responded to that terrible tragedy. But also there were a lot of people, civilians of all kinds, medical people who came, people who at the time helped out on that particular day, and then in the aftermath of what happened. When the government saw how willing people were willing to serve, they began to have a conversation about what kind of an organization can we create that will allow civilians to be able to help during emergencies, times of crisis. And so they created the Medical Reserve Corps. Now, I know the name sometimes says to people, well, I can't join because I'm a medical person. But the Medical Reserve Corps is for all people, not just medical people. You can be a bus driver, you can be an architect, you can be an administrator. It doesn't matter. If you are willing to serve your community, to help out in a time of crisis, then you can become part of the Medical Reserve Corps.
At the time, the president, it was George Bush, right, who actually put it into effect, the MRC?
Yes.
And said, yeah.
Yes.
So,
yeah, again, it was right after 9/11,
Yeah.
and the entire country was in shock,
yes.
and it just promoted people. What can I do? What can I do to help?
Right, yeah. That's a good thing, you know. And what type of training did you have to go through to become part of it?
Well, anyone who joins the Medical Reserve Corps, obviously we have medical people. In Winthrop's Medical Reserve Corps, I have emergency room nurses, I have OR nurses, I have RNs, LPNs, I have occupational therapists, physical therapists, and I have, like I told you, everyday people. I have an architect, I do have a food service director, I have administrators, I have office personnel, I have homemakers, and just civilians who just want to help. So the training that they go through, the basic training, is called ICS, which stands for Incident Command System. And the basic one you need to go through is 100 and 700. And what that basically does, it sort of teaches you, it's almost like in the military when you have a chain of command and what each function of that command is. So it teaches you the basis of the structure of what we're following. Also, we do first aid training, CPR training. We've done stop the bleed training. We do animal rescue in our shelters as well. So there's all kinds of trainings that we offer and will continue to offer. Sometimes, I mean, we've even had hospice nurses give us some information on how the care of hospice is. I've had funeral directors come in to talk about bereavement and funerals and things like that. So the more I can expose the people, and again, I'm talking strictly Winthrop, to what we would like them to be trained in. We used to have, before COVID, we used to have a meeting once a month. Obviously, the past 2 years, I haven't held any meetings, but every meeting that I held, we had a training of some kind.
Okay. And what is the mission of the MRC?
The mission is to serve. It's as simple as that. If we take a community like Winthrop, like we had freezing cold day the other day, and I had called the chief to say, do you think you're going to be opening a warming station? Mm-hmm. And I said, we're available. If you need someone to man the station, then we're here. When we've had blizzards and things like that, especially with the thought if someone was going to lose electricity or people had to be evacuated, sometimes we would open shelters and the Medical Reserve Corps would man it. We would offer them shelter, we would offer them comfort care, some hot coffee and maybe, a munchkin. Not a roast beef dinner, but we would offer a shelter in the event that they needed to evacuate their home. We also promote public health. In Winthrop, when we used to have things like the farmers market or I Love Winthrop, we would always have a table at that event to promote public health. We would have all kinds of information on different kinds of health issues. Sometimes we would have freebies we could give away, that were little things that would help them, health-wise, things like that. So our mission really is based on a lot of health, to keeping the public health and aware of health.
Okay. And who should join MRC?
I would love everyone to join MRC. Since we started 17 years ago, I've had over 25 members who, with the exception of 2 who have passed away and 2 who have moved, I have the same people that I started with. And the past 2 years during COVID, when you would think no one would be interested, I've gotten 6 more volunteers. Aww. So anybody can join. And like I said, I have a variety of people, not all medical people. We find a role for everyone to serve in a capacity that they're comfortable with. And when you join Winthrop's MRC, you can just join for Winthrop. You don't have to join MRC, and if you get a call from the region or from the state that says, we're looking for volunteers, if you don't wish to travel anywhere other than Winthrop, you don't have to go. It's strictly a volunteer organization, okay? And you have to be comfortable in what you're doing.
Right, yeah. And what are some of the things that MRC volunteers do during COVID or during non-COVID times?
Okay. Well, during COVID times, we've been very busy. Mm-hmm. We've offered, some of my nurses have worked in other areas, other communities, when they've opened up vaccine clinics. I know they did Revere, Rumney Marsh, they've worked in Arlington, they worked in Roxbury, and we've been very busy here in Winthrop. Winthrop has done a minimum of 5 vaccine clinics, 2 pediatric clinics, and we've done 3 booster clinics. We're hoping, Meredith Hurley, who was a phenomenal health director, is trying to get more vaccines so that we can offer more booster clinics and more pediatric clinics. Right. And we're hoping that she's going to be able to do that. Winthrop also got, from the state, we got some of the testing kits, and we Meredith put out online, a drive-through to sign up and a drive-through. So we did that one night, kind of chilly out there, but we did it. And as people drove through, they were on a list, and they were able to pick up the testing kits. Any that we had left over, we gave to the schools, so that the schools could distribute them, which I thought was a very good thing to do.
I commend all of you for helping, especially during these trying times. So,
yeah. Well, the other thing too, and I want to commend Meredith for doing, and some of our nurses, they also did what we called homebounds. People who were homebounds and couldn't get out. Some of our nursing volunteers went and did that for the people who couldn't get out. Yeah. And our first responders in this town, our fire department is so wonderful. They also helped out when we had to do that as well. So
that's great. Awesome. And what can you expect from the MRC?
What can I expect? Well, I hope it continues for a very long time, whether or not I'm a coordinator or not, because the people are so dedicated to what they're doing. I hope that it will continue for forever. The fact that we are in trying times, it pays a toll on everybody, emotionally as well. One of the things that we did do, along with Survivors by the Sea, if you know Linda Caller and her Survivors by the Sea, we joined forces and we did over 1,500 wellness check phone calls just to talk to people. How are you doing? How do you feel? It was wonderful. Some of them were so happy to hear a voice and to have a communication. When we were doing the food bank, the Winthrop MRC, along with the rec department, me and Maury, and I'm sorry, I'm going to forget the name of the church, but we all worked together. My people worked the food bank like it was a job. They went there every day. They helped distribute. They helped set up. They helped deliver. So they were very involved in work in the food bank as well. And so that's just another aspect of some of the things that the Winthrop MRC does.
Right. Must make everyone from MRC feel good about helping, warms their heart, and just knowing that they're doing something that's very important.
Right. When they're not called, they call me and they say, "Is there anything for us to do?" They always want to be active and helping out. That's the kind of people that join the MRC.
Yeah, that's great. Great. And how much time commitment is the MRC?
You can give it as much time or as little time as you choose. When I put a call out that I need MRC members, if you can't come, you don't come. If you can come to help, then you come. It's a volunteer organization. Yes, I mean, if we call you 10 times and you say 9 times out of 10 you can't come, then maybe that's not really what you want to do. But most of my people, unless they're working or, some kind of other commitment comes up, they come out for everything. But you also have a choice. When you sign up, you can sign up just for Winthrop, or you can be on a list that you might get a call from Newton. You might get a call from Brookline that says, "We need help out here to man a clinic. Do you want to help?" Again, it's your choice whether or not you choose to go.
Okay. And how will we learn about volunteer opportunities?
Well, you can always go online. If you put in, I'm sure if you just put in something simple like, Medical Reserve Corps, you're going to find 1,000 sites that will show you 1,000 different, from California to Maine, different parts of the country in the MRC. Basically, they all follow the same rules, but everything's a little different depending on the area and the community that you live in. I mean, I don't anticipate Winthrop ever having wildfires like they have in some communities, but we have flooding where some states wouldn't have flooding. We have hurricanes like a lot of states do. Some states wouldn't have a hurricane. So it really depends on the area that you are, what part of the country you live in. But if you can go on and you can see what the general site of the Medical Reserve Corps is. If you want to look for Winthrop, then you can go on the Winthrop website, Winthrop Town Winthrop website, and in the little search bar, put in Medical Reserve Corps. And that will come up, and you will see an application form. You can fill out the application form. It will be sent to the health department, and then I will call you, and then we can talk about exactly any questions that you want answered. I will answer. If you feel comfortable and want to join, then you join, and if you don't, you don't.
Okay. And Jeannie, who is qualified to administer the COVID vaccines?
That's strictly up to Meredith Hurley. She is our health director, our clinical director. She is the one that supervises all the medical aspects of it. She makes sure that we know the correct doses to give. Anything that's medical of any kind, it comes under Meredith. She has absolute control over that. We just follow orders on whatever she tells us medically to do.
Okay. So. And it seems like there are so many disasters happening around the world. What kind of emergency does MRC help with in Winthrop?
Well, over the years, we've done quite a few things. We've had, obviously, hurricanes. We've had blizzards. And again, when Chief Paul Flanagan was the chief and the emergency management director, I would always check with him. And I would only alert the MRC if he said, we need to open a shelter or we're on standby, because he has control, and now Chief Scott Wiley is the only one who makes the decision on whether or not a shelter is going to be open. And in the event, usually people who are listed on the 911 for Winthrop, and if they're not, they should be, and you can find out how to do that by also going on the town website and signing up to be on Code Red 911. So that you get the phone calls when there's some kind of an emergency or an alert that you have to be aware of. So if we get the call from the chief and says, I want you on standby, we may be opening a shelter, then that's when we get the order. And we don't deploy unless we're given the order to deploy. That's one of the strictest things. We all have good intentions, but what happened, say an example like Katrina, so many people wanted to help, and they went down to New Orleans. There were no hotels. There were no places for you to sleep. There were no restaurants that were working. So if you deploy without being told to deploy, you're on your own, and that's not a good thing to do. So you only go when you're told to go.
Right. And what are things to do to prepare for any type of disaster?
Well, there's a lot you can do. We always talk about having a go kit in your house, and that's for each member of your family. You should have a little bag that's always packed, that has change of clothing for a couple of days. If you have any medications, if you can remember, if you pack it, to also rotate it if the bag sits in the closet for any time, but to make sure that you have medications with you. Some personal items with you. Also, if you have copies of any personal records, to make sure that if you're going to take them, you take them with you. But make sure that you have those, because you don't know in a flood or, God forbid, a fire, those documents can be destroyed. So you have things like that. If you have a pet, make sure that you have pet food, things like that. And so, yeah, things of that nature that you should have.
Okay. And where would people go here in Winthrop if there was an emergency?
Well, there's a couple of areas in Winthrop that have been declared as shelters. And again, I want to make perfectly clear in this, you never go to a shelter unless you are told in a code red call that the shelter is open. Okay? Because we don't open a shelter unless we absolutely need to. One of the Cumming School is one of the areas that has been designated as a shelter. The Senior Center as a shelter. Basically, right now, those are the only two areas that we have used in the past as shelters. In a larger emergency, may other facilities in the town be open? That's always a possibility. But right now, those are the only two. When we had the big fire at Governor's Park, they moved a lot of the residents to the senior center, but we knew that was only going to be a temporary shelter, because 90% of those residents went back to they were able to go back to their apartment. And that's another thing I want to compliment. The Red Cross came in at that time, and we work so well together, because we don't have the ability on a local level to help a person if they need to go to a hotel or they need certain items. We don't have that kind of ability to do that. So the Red Cross comes in on something like that, and we had a couple of people who couldn't go back to their apartments, so they helped to put them up. They helped them do all the documentation that they needed to do. So the Red Cross is also a wonderful organization in a time of emergency.
That's good that you both can work, side by side and help.
Yeah, they were wonderful to work with.
Yeah. So you mentioned about make sure that you bring dog food or food for your animal and stuff. So if there was an emergency, we would be able to if there was we could bring our pets to the shelter.
Absolutely, and I'm going to tell you why that was an absolute. When I started Winthrop's MRC, that was an absolute. If you remember Hurricane Katrina, Well, at that time, Rick White was our town manager, and I had asked him, I said, I've made contact with some emergency personnel in New Orleans, and I would like to go down as an observer to see and to talk to them to see how they happen, because waterfront, etc. And he let me go. And I went around with them and saw the devastation and talked to them about their response and things. And as we know, there was a lot of devastation in New Orleans. A lot of people didn't make it. And I asked the respondent that I was with, and I said, I know that the hurricane itself and the flooding itself is a cause for people to pass away, but what's another reason? And he said, because they didn't let their pets get on the bus to be evacuated with them. And because they didn't, the people wouldn't leave. When I heard that, when I came back to Winthrop, and this is something for some people, I'm an animal lover anyway, but I made a rule. If you have to come to the shelter, your pet comes to the shelter with you. They will not be left behind. Absolutely not. Our people are also trained. We have a system where we could set up a whole area for pets. Yes, they have to be in crates, but we have a system, we document, you can come and visit your pet, you can take your pet out for a walk if, the weather is good, but we have a system where you can bring your pet, your dog, your cat. Of course, if you have an anaconda, we might have a little difficulty, but we've said no pet is going to be left behind.
Okay, great. And if anyone would like to volunteer, how would they go about it? You mentioned about going on the website for the application.
Yes. If you go on the Winthrop website, the town of Winthrop, under the health department, and then you type in under search, Medical Reserve Corps, you'll see an application come up. And you fill out the application. It gives you the address to send it in. You can fax it or mail it or deliver it. It's going to be delivered to the health department, which is now based in the old E.B. Newton School. But you can bring it there, or you can mail it in, and it will get to them. And if you want, you can just email me directly, and I'll give you the email. It's mrc@town.winthrop.ma.us. And I will respond to all of you who contact me.
For volunteer, is there anything that people can do that would prefer not to do a real hands-on volunteer, like kind of behind the scenes type volunteer?
I mean, there's all kinds of jobs that you can do. Obviously, the medical is only handled by medical personnel. That's the only thing we can do. But for example, when we did the vaccine clinics, we need someone to help register. So if you're handy on a computer, we'll teach you how to do registration. If you want to do crowd control, which means, okay, you can move now, and keep people going, you can do crowd control. If someone needs assistance, because they have a little difficulty walking or something like that, we can assist you. So, I mean, it's not just medical, and like I say, the term scares people, I think, sometimes, but there's a job for everybody to do. We've had people out there directing traffic, and people who just stand and greet you at the door and tell you what line to get in, things like that. So there's all kinds of opportunities that you can help out with.
Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Jeannie, about MRC that you think that our audience should know about?
Well, it's a wonderful organization, especially if you're a person who likes to volunteer. There are rules. I mean, you can't just go off and do things on your own. There are rules and regulations. There are trainings, as I said before, that you have to go through. And we offer trainings. As a former teacher, I believe if you don't keep your students interested, you lose them. Well, I did the same thing with the MRC. Every time we had a meeting, we had a training of some kind so that we would keep them interested. And that's why, like I said, we've become like a family, because some of them have been with me since the very beginning when I started the Winthrop, Winthrop's MRC. The MRC through the state, we have two regions, Region A and Region B. Region B is sort of like the city, like Boston, Brookline, Everett, Somerville, Newton, Winthrop, Revere, Chelsea. And then A is sort of the suburban, the western part of the state. We used to be two separate units, but now we're A and B together. Obviously, some of the things that they do out in the western part of the state is different than what we would do in the city environment, where they're more suburban and more country. But as I said before, to become involved, there's going to be a spot for anybody who wants to join. Okay? You don't have to have a college degree. If you just have the interest and you're willing to learn and willing to serve, then you're welcome to join.
Awesome. Okay. I know that you just gave the contact info. Can you give it to our audience one more time?
Yes. Okay, if you go on Winthrop's website, type in the search thing, Medical Reserve Corps, an application will come up. It'll tell you where to send it. Fill it out, send it there. And also, if you want to contact me directly, that's fine. It's mrc@town.winthrop.ma.us.
Okay. I'm sorry, but that's all the time that we have. Thank you, Jeannie, for all that you do for those in need. I love to hear your thoughts and suggestions. Please send them to lifeissuestv@gmail.com. And remember, live each day to the fullest and celebrate life.